Thursday, or as I like to call it, Friday Eve. Well, winter's coming, and going to have to get used to a bit of a different routine. Don't love winter, but here in Cape Breton Island, it's not so bad, not compared to a lot of other places in Canada. It doesn't get super cold most of the winter. I think our two coldest weeks are, or the coldest air part of the winter is the last 2 weeks of January and first 2 weeks of February. It starts to moderate after that, so not so bad. Last night I was out at a meeting and came out about 8 o'clock at night, and the temperature had dropped. It was probably around 2 or 3 degrees Celsius. Not sure what that is in Fahrenheit for our American friends, but just above zero, basically, just above the freezing point. I hadn't preheated my car before I jumped in. I guess I'll get used to that routine. There's an option on the app to precondition and preheat the cabin, which is welcome. So I jumped in cold, and it took a few minutes for it to heat up to temperature. And in that process, I had pulled into Walmart, had to pick up a few things. So I turned the car off, got out, turned the car off, and started to walk into the store. And then it dawned on me, well, why am I leaving the car off? Maybe I can just turn the preconditioning on, the preheating on, and that way when I get back in the car, it'll be warm. So I pulled up my app and hit the button, and it kept the car warm. So I like that option. Cold is not my friend in the winter, and just jumping into a nice, warm, cozy car is a great thing. Haven't had a car starter in any vehicles I've had before. The last vehicle I had, my truck, it took forever to warm up going to work. I basically live at the top of a long hill, about 5 kilometers, and my previous place of employment was down basically at the bottom of the hill. So the truck would basically be in eco mode pretty much the whole way, because I'd be going downhill, and it wouldn't run on all 8 cylinders. It would just slip into its 6-cylinder eco mode, and the vehicle wouldn't warm up. I would get to work, and it would just start getting warm. So having this is a bit of a luxury. I like that. But I started thinking, when I got out, I looked at the power consumption, and it had used 0.4 kilowatts in preconditioning, and that included, I think, the batteries and the cabin. And so when I got in, it was nice and warm, everything was great. Started to my next stop. I went to get a coffee, and I monitored the usage and waited for the energy usage in running the cabin and running the heating. Watched it as it sort of climbed up. And it actually didn't climb up that high. I was kind of surprised. I think it was at 0.2 kilowatts when I got to my destination, about 5 kilometers into my journey, I guess. So it used a little more in preconditioning than it did in actually running the vehicle over a 5-kilometer run. So I did the same trick. I left the vehicle on. I used the button on the dash this time. So rather than turn it off and then restart the air conditioning, the heating system, with the button on my app, I just used the dash option to leave the car running, and went in, got a coffee, came back out, car was on, and sat there, had my coffee, did a little bit of scrolling. So that worked out nicely. I had a nice warm cabin, headed for home, and continued to watch the percentage of power that was used for climate control in the cabin. I have an Equinox, 2025 Equinox EV, and it's got a setting, an analytics setting, that shows you the amount of power used for your preconditioning, which I think is the battery conditioning and setting up your initial temperature in the cabin. But then when you're actually running, it shows the amount of electricity used while you're operating the vehicle on a different gauge, essentially. So it splits it into your environmental controls, the energy used for actually moving the vehicle, and the preconditioning percentage. So by the time I got home, around 10 kilometers, 9.9 or 9.8 kilometers in total, it had used 0.6 kilowatts for cabin conditioning, and still only the 0.4 watts that it had originally used when I was at Walmart. So the question I had, and I don't really know the answer to yet, is it better to leave the vehicle on and leave that one preconditioning cycle on if you're going into a store for a couple of minutes? If you turn the vehicle off and then come back out and then have it precondition again, what is the energy usage comparison? It looks to me like it's more economical if you're going in for a short stop to hit the button on the dash, leave the vehicle on, and have it maintain its temperature, rather than shut the vehicle off, have it cool down, and then get in later and turn it back on again and have it need to precondition and come up the temperature again. I don't really know the answer to that. Maybe someone watching this can tell me what they think. I'd like to know what your experience is with preconditioning and preheating in winter temperatures. I looked it up on Google, and it seemed to say that it would be better to turn the vehicle off, and that you'd use less energy if you turn the vehicle off and restart it. Again, my experience looking at the gauges shows perhaps a different result. I'd really like to know. I do love that option of leaving the vehicle on and having it warm when I come out, regardless of whether it uses an extra half a kilowatt or so. I think that's more than worth the price of admission. I charge every night or every second night at home anyway, so range, and even in cold temperature, is not going to be a problem for the minuscule amount of electricity that's going to use in process. I very rarely drive really more than 50 kilometers a day, but very, very rarely more than 100 kilometers a day. So I'm not worried about exhausting the battery or using up energy I would need otherwise to go somewhere. So let me know what you think. And if you're so inclined, give me a like, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be working out these issues as I learn how to operate an EV over the winter season. What the good practices are and what things I need to avoid. Hope to pass them on. So like I said, give me a like.